It's time for our edible applications Division ePoster pitch competition. So my name is Doug Beavis. I'm your current AOCS president. Really honored to be here. I really enjoyed an e-pitch that I was part of yesterday. So this is really an exciting new approach for our virtual meeting. So, and I'm joined by three judges. The judging panelists are Dr. Amanda Wright. She's an associate professor at the University of Guelph in Canada. Dr. Philippe van Boxtel, he's a professor at Ghent University in Belgium, and Dr. Christophe Butter-copra, he's a principal application specialist at IFF in Denmark. So what's going to happen today, we have 5 students. They're going to present for 5 minutes each, or up to 5 minutes each, on their research using PowerPoint presentations, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A session after each presentation, so you'll be able to ask questions. And then there's also so there's 3 votes from 3 judges, and then the audience votes as well. After the first 3 contestants, we'll have a vote, and then after the second 2, we'll have a vote. So your vote is 25% of the overall vote, so your audience voting is very important. So really encourage you to do that. So we're going to start today with the first candidate is Maria Romero Pena. She is a PhD candidate at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, Canada. Got some really good friends that live there. She is also a professor at Escuela Superior Politécnica de La Toro in Ecuador. So Maria is in the PhD program at Saskatchewan since 2017 under the supervision of Dr. Supratim Dash. And her thesis is development of stable liquid water and oil emulsions by modifying emulsion aqueous phase interactions for food and related applications. And the title of her talk today is Viscoelastic Improvement of Water and Oil Emulsions for Food and Related Applications. So thank you, Maria, for joining us.
Everyone, thank you for attending my presentation. One of the current challenges in the food industry is the development of low-fat margarine type table spreads with glycerol monolith. So this type of emulsion with glycerol monolith are very complicated systems to stabilize. For example, here, this emulsion it has no additive in the aqueous phase. As you can see, it's completely destabilized. However, this emulsion contains low methoxyl pectin in the aqueous phase, and this emulsion reached near the 80% of stability. So this led us our project to develop a viscoelastic improvement of water in oil emulsions for food and related applications. So to modify this liquid state to a solid-like properties. So now I'm going to show you the methodology that we use. In the aqueous phase, we add 1.5% of low methoxyl pectin, LMP. In the continuous oil phase, that was canola oil, we add 7% of hydrogenated soybean oil, which create a crystal network to give support. Then GMO and water was at a constant ratio of 0.065. So we keep constant because we want to remain similar water droplets size. So LMP emulsions we developed in 4 different levels of water, 20, 30, 40, and 50%. And control emulsions had the same ingredients without LMP. So control emulsions contain 2 levels of water, 20 and 50%, and all the emulsions were prepared with 2 steps of homogenization. First, the raw stator, and second, the high pressure homogenizer. So now let's see the results. Here are the stability results on day 30. For control emulsions, 20% water, it showed a flow. For 50% water, there was a phase separation at the bottom, as you can see here. However, LMP emulsions did not show any separation or flow. So now this is the apparent viscosity results, which is a flow resistance. We give us an idea about that. So viscosity showing Pascal per second, and as the shear rate increase, the viscosity decrease. This behavior is shear thinning viscosity. comparing day 1 to day 30, almost all emulsions remains in value or increase a bit. However, control emulsion with 20% water show a significant drop. This was related with this flow in the stability test. So now for the storage modulus is G prime is related to the elastic capacity of emulsions. So just for comparison purposes, I'm gonna show for a 0.01% of strain. So all the emulsions show an increase, a G prime increase with the rise of water content. As you can see here, LMP, however, and this is for the control of 50%. However, control percent 20 show a significant drop compared with 20% emulsion with containing LMP. Now the crossover strain, it will give us the strain required for gel breakdown. So here is showing the crossover strain versus the water content, and you will see that for day 1 and day 30. So all the LMP emulsions show a proportional increase with the water content, compared with both control that show significantly lower values. This indicates that LMP form a higher gel strength in all emulsions. So now I want to show you the mechanism behind this. So 20% wiring all canal emulsions with LMP form a viscoelastic gel due to the less water droplets. However, without LMP, there was evidence that it was a liquid-like flow due to the emulsion destabilization. With the highest water content, 50%, wiring all emulsions with LMP form a strong elastic gel due to the droplet aggregation and packing. However, without LMP, definitely was a strong gel, but mainly due to the partial release of the stabilized water droplets and predominant fat crystal networks. Overall, the increase of water content containing LMP and HSO with GMO allowed the development of viscoelastic properties of wiring canola oil emulsions, being an innovative alternative for low-fat spreads. Thank you so much, and I'm gonna answer the questions after in the Q&A.
Thanks, Maria. Excellent presentation. We're going to open questions up to our judges now for you.
Sure,
well,
Doug.
Amanda, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Really nice job. You exemplified your data in a really effective way and highlighted the problem that you're challenged to tackle at the very start. So really nice work. One of my questions was, what motivated your decision to use low methoxypectin in particular?
Well, we tried different molecules that have hydroxyl group donating agents. So we have a previous research where we identified that the pectin was the best molecule that interact with GMO at the interface. That's why this is a further research after that.
Okay. And do you expect that you might see differences in the stability of your emulsions based on things like pH if you were to put this into a food application?
So far, we have worked only with the addition of the hydroxyl group donating agents, but definitely it's an idea that we can do in the future, do more work in the future. Yeah. So far, it's only for pH 3. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Maria. I think it was also great. I love the way you drew the mechanisms and all. I think it was very depictive. Apart from the pH questions Amanda had, my question was, typical margarines and spreads always contain a bit of protein for a faster flavor release emulsion breakdown. So because with all the emulsifiers, it can be a very tight emulsion, thinking practical application in mind. So have you ever tried adding a little bit of skim milk powder or a dairy protein in the water phase? Or do you expect any destabilization effect from that when you add protein?
Well, I have read studies that they have been using another proteins, like you mentioned, and forming like a network too. However, now it's our research is basically because in studies before it was found canola oil emulsions or vegetable oil emulsions are very complicated systems to stabilize. So our idea was to find what was the reason and try to solve this problem. And we found that it was for the hydroxyl group donating agents, that GMO is a small emulsifier but need this bonding in enhance the bonding, because it is a bonding that happens, but GMO distort up the interface. So far we are keeping our project trying to solve that problem that have been happening for many years. So, but definitely it's a good idea for the future for sure.
Yeah, because I'm from the industry and all the fantastic work you guys do. I always want to translate it back to the industry, to the consumers, so I can enjoy that as consumers, because this can be a great application. And one other point, you have fully hydrogenated soybean oil, which would melt very steep. I mean, it doesn't melt that well. So maybe in some cases, have you tried something that melts more, more smoothly. Steeply, more smoothly?
You're right. So far now we did analysis of solid fat content in this project. I'm not showing the data here, but definitely what actually we propose in the future is not using hydrogenated soybean oil. It's actually using another type of emulsifier, like particles that enhance the network, like a substitution, partial substitution, right? But yeah, definitely something that we have to look in the future. But there's so many things that we want to do after this.
Absolutely. Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Hello, Maria. Also from my side, big thanks for your nice pitch. It already solved some of my questions. So from that perspective, it was already enlightening. You said you're targeting the table spread or the fat spread application. Did you ever also include a reference, a commercial reference of a table spread? And do you think your rheology values that you obtain are close to commercial applications?
Good point. Really good question. Definitely something that we want to do, but at the beginning it's we were trying to change something that was liquid to solid by this solution. So I think all the questions that you made me today open to more stuff to do, right? Comparing, analyzing within our compounds. So, but I think it's a good start. So far we haven't done, but
yeah. Okay, you use the GMO as an emulsifier. Yes. Could you shortly tell a bit more about that choice?
So glycerol monolate is a amazing emulsifier, have very good properties at the interface. In general, we want to choose GMO because, PGPR have been an emulsifier that have been used for so many years in water oil emulsions. But in Canada, this emulsifier was banned since 2018. So there are some, the last maybe 10 years, try to smoothly change that part, right? So that's why we went to this type of emulsifier that is also have a very good interaction, but the structure is very small. So we try to...
How do you think there is an interaction with that emulsifier and the fat crystals?
GMO has been identified in previous analysis, like it helped to localize the crystal at the interface. So if the crystal is not sulfate active, the GMO will help in the polarity and kind of surround the water droplet.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Philip, Supratim loves GMO. I know a lot of Supratim's work is based on GMO. I've had discussions with him. He loves it.
But it has a reason.
Yeah. I know.
Joking. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maria, very much. Hey, so welcome back. It's our second e-pitch. Today it's by Kunal Kadiya. Kunal is a PhD candidate at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. His research areas include developing food-grade nanoemulsions, exploring the use of protein and biopolymers in making bilayer emulsion gels, and studying their rheology and digestion behavior. Kunal received his master's in dairy science from the National Dairy Institute of India, worked on the technology to develop a probiotic cheese as part of his master's research. The title of Kunal's presentation for today is Effect of Interfacial Composition on the Rheological and Digestion Behavior of Emulsions. So welcome, Kunal.
Thanks, Doc, for the introductions. Hi, everyone. So today I'm going to deliver my ePoster pitch on effect of interfacial composition on the rheological and digestion behavior of emulsions. So we know that we consume many food emulsion cells in our day-to-day life, but typically if I'm talk about the emulsion gels like a mayonnaise, which has around 80% fat, the close packed structure created by the repulsive droplet, it's giving the food gel kind of structure here. In my research, the goal is to create the mayonnaise-like structure with low fat. Particularly in mayonnaise with 80% oil, the effective volume fraction is very similar to the actual oil volume fractions. And here is the equation how we can calculate the effective volume fractions. But my objective is to reduce the droplet size here and then increase the interfacial thickness at the similar kind of structure at lower oil concentration by increasing the effective volume fractions. My hypothesis is that by reducing the droplet size from coarse emulsion to the nano emulsion, and then by putting the second layer of biopolymer onto the nanoscale droplet, we can increase the interfacial thickness, and this will allow the droplets to close pack, and those close pack structure will not allow the droplet to move, and the droplet would be, create a gel kind of structure from the liquid emulsions. To illustrate this one in a simple way, I have a really good example here. So we can see here the herd of sheep where without the wool on their body, actually, they can move really easily. But think on the other sides, when they have really thick wool on their body, they cannot move easily around. So that's the importance of the wool thickness there. Similarly, in my research, actually, the interfacial thickness can play a similar role, and the close pack structure created by a much higher contribution of the interfacial thickness can lead to the gel kind of structures in the emulsions. Another advantage of creating a gel-like structure would be, we hypothesize that the digestion behavior, the digestion would reduce in that case when we have a thick interfacial layer, because our hypothesis is that the lipase actions on the triglyceride molecule will restrict because of the higher interfacial thickness, which will delay the lipase action, and there is possibility to reduce the digestion of the lipid in that case also. So with that hypothesis, how did we reduce the droplet size to the nanoscale? So we used a very surface-active food-grade emulsifier, Citrem, with 40% oil, and we used the high-pressure homogenizer to reduce the droplet size to nanoscale around 200 nanometers. Our second approach was to reduce or to increase the interfacial thickness. To increase the interfacial thickness, we used the positively charged chitosan polymer to deposit onto the negatively charged Citrem stabilized droplet. And by increasing the interfacial thickness, we just want to achieve the close pack structure. And for this particular research, we use the different concentration of chitosan and with different positive charge of the chitosan, that is the degree of deacetylation. But for the time's sake, I will just presenting the results using the DD93 chitosans. Come to the results. So gel strength. So we compared the gel strength by plotting the storage modulus as a function of chitosan concentration. So higher the storage modulus, then higher the gel strength of the emulsions. We can see with the monolayer Citrem stabilized emulsion, the emulsion was kind of liquid. But with the increase in chitosan concentration, we can see that we were able to create the gel kind of structure with higher storage modulus. And then eventually at 0.25% chitosan, we can see the storage modulus still reduced compared to the intermediate concentration of chitosan. This could be understood by the confocal microstructure of these emulsions. And at the bottom, we have the droplet charge and the droplet size. So we can see that at 0% chitosan, when only citrum stabilized droplets were there, droplets were very nicely distributed with the negative charge and with the lower droplet size. But as we added the chitosan, the droplets were flocculated, probably because the polymer concentration was not enough. That leads to the bridging flocculation among the droplets, and that's created the the aggregated structure or attractive emulsion gel at intermediate concentration. But as we increase the chitosan concentration to the higher concentration at 0.25%, we can see the droplets was positively charged, repulsively charged, and again we can see the decrease in droplet size. So this close pack structure created by the positively charged and the higher interfacial thickness can lead to the close pack structure, and the droplet cannot move, and it's actually increased the storage modulus around 10 times than the citrum stabilized droplets. Another objective was to evaluate the digestion behavior, and we analyzed the digestion behavior of emulsion by following the InfoJust2 protocols and by PSTAT protocol. Actually, on the right side, we can see that the fatty acid profiles of the emulsions at different stages of digestions. We can see that the digestion of the emulsions reduce as we increase the chitosan concentration, and when the droplets are completely covered by the chitosan, the digestibility was reduced from 25% to the 17%, and that's because of the restrictions on the lipase actions on the triglyceride molecules. To summarize these things in terms of the gel strength and lipid digestibility, by this research, actually, we got three different kind of structures. Liquid nanoemulsions, when the droplets are only stabilized by the citrum only, that's the monolayer emulsions. But as we added the chitosan, we can see that the storage modulus increased, and the kind of gel we got, it was because of the bridging flocculation. But at higher concentration, the droplets were completely covered by the chitosan, and the increase in repulsive nature between the droplets and increase in the interfacial thickness leads to the increase in the gel strength and the kind of gel structures. The similar effect we observed on the lipid digestibility, as we have like the droplets were more and more covered by the chitosan, the digestibility was reduced, and it was reduced around like from 25 to the 17%. So the takeaway message from my research is that by creating this kind of structure, it can be used into the low-fat products with the controlled digestibility. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Kunal. That was a great presentation. Really enjoyed it. Some really good science there. So, judges, do you have some questions for Kunal and his paper?
Yeah, Kunal, I think it was very interesting, because when I look into the mayonnaise, it's definitely tasty, but definitely also high fat. So often I wonder if low fat ones can also taste as good as the high fat ones, right? It's interesting, so when we talk about mayonnaise, normally people only use liquid oils, canola, sunflower, soybean, and in many parts of the world, those are very expensive oils, while palmolene is very cheap. But palmolene still has a bit of solids that does not sit well in an emulsion like mayonnaise. So do you think this kind of double layering, we can prevent a bit of, what do you call it? I don't know if it suppress crystallization a bit so it does not connect and separate. Have you tried?
So we use the canola oil for this study. So we didn't have any experience with the other oil, but it would be really great to, look into that part as well. And probably it is possible to, creating this kind of interfacial thickness to, what you are targeting, that can be also achieved. There are many other aspects of, by coating the droplet. This is kind of the encapsulation process. You are just giving the high interfacial thickness to the droplets, and our main objective is to just look onto the gel strength and then the digestibility. But that can also be checked in the future, actually, with the different.
Well, I think from the industry point of view, I mean, for customers would be quite interested if you can suppress so it does not crystallize out of the droplet, right? Another question, what's the main role of the citrum, do you think, here? Because you added 3%, that's a lot of emulsifiers. They're good for our business, but people don't buy that much amount.
Yeah, so for today's presentation, I have the time limit. Otherwise, my whole research, and even I published the paper on this actually. So we used 3%, but we removed the excess citrum from the continuous phase. So the role of the citrum is that it's first we wanted to make the food grade emulsion actually. So that's why we use the citrum, and citrum is a really surface active molecule to reduce the droplet size to nanoscale. But the science says that you need really high amount of emulsifier when you want to reduce the droplet size to the nanoscales. And that's the problem when you want to put the second layer onto the droplets. Excess emulsifier actually into the continuous phase can react with the polymer first, so your polymer cannot go to the interface. So what we did actually, we removed the excess, and then we were able to deposit the second layer onto the droplets. So although it's a 3%, but I have the data, and the data says that I have removed around 1.2% of the citrum from the continuous phase. So probably in the secondary emulsion, I have around 1.5 to 1.6% citrum onto the droplet actually.
And I think just one couple of comments that, if when you can also try datums, they're also very surface active. In fact, for mayonnaise, we promote a lot of datum instead of citrum, because when you talk about citrums, you need to identify what kind of citrum was it, what kind of monoglyceride was there, or what's the acid value. Because citrums can have such a wide range. So maybe in the paper you did, but in this short scope you didn't. But definitely
so I can answer that question actually. We use the citrum with the HLB value of 9 to 10. So it was kind of intermediate range, which has really surface activity actually compared to the lower HLB value actually.
Focus on the acid value. HLB is pretty empirical. The acid value will tell you how much amount of actual citric acid esters are there. But that's a different discussion. But very good. Very nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gaston.
Kunal, thank you. I really enjoyed that as well. You made excellent use of your schematics and visuals. The sheep diagram in particular was very telling to demonstrate the bilayer effect. And your summary slide where you overlaid things in the schematic to really integrate your findings, I thought was especially well done. So I enjoyed it overall. I was wondering if you could comment a little bit more about your digestibility differences and why you might be targeting decreased digestibility in your as an end goal.
Yeah, so we want to just reduce the digestibility. The goal is that actually. So suppose if you are taking the food, but when you take the high calorie food, definitely the digestibility, in terms of I'm talking about the calorie you are taking. So here the thing is that if you have the control over that release actually during the digestion, definitely the energy intake. So the human beings are such that they are working and they are consuming the energy from the food actually. So the thing is that we just want to control that process actually. So the second layer, the chitosan, or maybe we can put some other interfacial composition. So this is really generalized statement. When you have really thick interfacial layer, then it is possible to reduce the digestibility or control the digestibility. This concept is also used in many other applications for the control release of the bioactive molecule from to the droplets. So that's what our objective actually. So to get the gel strength at lower oil concentration, and then to reduce the digestibility. So that would be kind of the functional food in that case to reduce the calorie content.
Yeah, I mean, some people might challenge to say, well, do you really want to prevent too much digestibility? Where will that go? I understand what you're saying about from a caloric perspective, but what are our systems made to handle a whole bunch of undigested lipids in the lower intestine, for example?
That's a really good question actually, and we didn't look on that actually. So this was a kind of in vitro digestion, but that would be really great to start try this kind of emulsion in an animal in vivo study as well. So probably that would give you a better idea like how these emulsions are behaving actually.
Yeah, I was particularly interested when you said to control the digestibility. I mean, maybe not to stop digestibility per se, but in order to tailor it so that you might have some sort of controlled release, especially as you said, with respect to the bioactives. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Okay, Kunal, also from my side, many thanks for your pitch. I enjoyed also the visuals, like Amanda already said.
Thank you.
And I also love the nanostructure approach to create these microstructures. You showed some confocal microscope pictures.
Yeah.
But of course, you do not really see like a bilayer in those pictures. Did you ever try to also visualize with other
Yes.
techniques
So we
the
have
nanostructure?
Yes. So we have the SCM images actually, and we can really see the second layer onto the chitosan second layer onto that. And to, in the confocal structure, actually, we also added the another dye, fast green, which can really react with the chitosan, and we can see those structure. But the thing is that the kind of confocal we have in our university, it's not that really great to focus onto the interface specifically. So we are trying to get those data by SCM actually. Apart from that, we are also trying to look onto the structure using the USask actually. So we already did that study. We have the data, we are analyzing those things. So probably in the future, we'll come out with the paper where we'll come out with the thickness of interface and then how the chitosan is actually contributing into that.
Okay, and that's possible with USax to get some information from that, or?
Yes, we are targeting that thing, and we are looking forward to that actually.
Yeah. Okay, looking forward to that those results. You're using Citrem.
Yes.
I was just wondering, because there is a huge clean label trend in industry, are there clean label alternatives for this type of emulsifier to produce nano emulsions?
Yeah. So Citrem is actually food grade synthetic. It's a synthetic emulsifier, but it's a food grade. And there was a project actually Nestle did with some university actually, and Citrem stabilized infant formula actually. And they did the study for this one, and they said that it is really easy digestible. It doesn't have any adverse effect. So, and those data are already published on that. And based on that, we also try to use the Citrem actually.
Okay, but you don't know that there is an alternative for
alternative is there actually. So basically, actually, we want to make the two layer. So the first layer should be negatively charged droplet. And for that, we need the emulsifier, which gives the really nano droplet actually. So people use the sodium todecyl sulfate for a negatively charged droplet, but that's not a food grade. So the alternative we found is the Citrem actually.
And the chitosan, does it have any nutritional property or advantage?
Chitosan is like nutritional in terms of like it has the it can help to reduce the reduction in the cholesterol I heard about, but not in detail actually, and we didn't study about those things. But the focus for this research is to use the chitosan because there is only one biopolymer available which is having the positive charge, and to coat onto the Citrem we need the positively charged biopolymer. So that's how actually we use the chitosan without digging into the details of how chitosan would be helpful in the health benefits actually.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Kunal. Great discussion, good questions. And, we'll move on to our next speaker.
Hi everyone, thank you for this introduction. I would like to first ask before presenting, has anyone heard about flexitarianism? Well, flexitarianism is an increasingly popular plant-based diet that aims to reduce our carbon footprint and to improve our health through a shift toward vegan and vegetarian foods, but with occasional meat or fish dish. The rise of the flexitarian diet is a result of people taking a more environmentally sustainable approach to what they eat by reducing their meat and dairy product consumption in exchange for alternative plant sources. it is attracting more and more people. Maybe you are becoming a flexitarian too. And as a result, you may have seen on the agri-food markets that more and more vegan, vegetarian and dairy food products are launched. A 25% increase in vegetarian product launches between 2012 and 2016 was reported, and a 200% increase in vegan option during the same time. This shift in consumer preferences is putting the spotlight on plant-based ingredients. And so it's driving innovation across a multitude of product categories. Therefore, formulating a plant-based product requires product developers to rethink and to recreate the organoleptically pleasing and functional properties. In dairy products, milk fat is an important ingredient, and its crystallization has a significant impact on the structure of the product. But milk fat is complex, and replacing it in dairy alternative products, well, it's not an easy task. So the work I'm going to talk about and the work we've done involves blending two vegetable fats, cocoa butter and coconut oil. The first one is extracted from the cocoa bean that you may know in many chocolate products. And the second one is produced from the cocoa nut. And both of these fats are solid at room temperature, but they have different chemical characteristics. For example, cocoa butter on the one hand contains long-chain saturated fatty acid and also unsaturated fatty acid. It has fast crystallizing properties. On the other hand, coconut oil has high amount of medium-chain saturated fatty acid and high oxidative stability. Fat and oil blending are widely used in food industry. It's allowed to produce blended fats at an affordable price. And blending of vegetable fat with different properties is one of the simplest methods to create new products with desired specific properties. But here in our work, mixing cocoa butter and copra oil induced the depression of the melting point, the solid fat content, and the hardness relative to either pure fats. This kind of mixing behavior is typical when you have two solid fats that are immiscible. A solid immiscible fat led to eutectic phase. Eutectic fat mixture, it comes from the Greek, it means easily melted. Here, this is due to the structural differences of the molecules of the two fats, leading to fat incompatibility at different scale of organization. So the aim of this work is to investigate this eutectic behavior by studying the blending fat structure at different scale. We also analyze the structure of the fat blend from the centimeter scale down to the micrometer scale using a multi-technique approach. And the second objective of this work was also to understand the dependence of other factors, such as crystallization temperature on the eutectic behavior also of these blends. Thank you for your attention.
Thanks, Julie, for a great presentation. I did get a chance to introduce you. You're a PhD candidate at the Paul Pasquale Center for Research in the University of Bordeaux. So really enjoyed your talk, and we're going to open your talk up to questions from the judges now.
Who goes first? Philip, your turn. Philip.
Okay.
First. Go ahead.
Thank you, Julie, for the talk. Well, it was a bit more difficult to follow because we didn't see the poster. So that's my comment, maybe in general on the talk. But okay, it's an interesting topic for sure. So you mix, in fact, coconut oil with cocoa butter. They are both plant-based. But okay, why should you choose one or the other? Then there are some factors in choosing them in food industry, of course.
Well, the objective of my thesis was to use cocoa butter for sure.
Yes.
Why we use coconut oil? We wanted to have a solid fat with high amount of saturated fatty acid in order to have the advantage of the saturated fatty acid. So we didn't choose palm oil because of the environmentally sustainable approach that the consumer wants. So that's what we use coconut oil, and we blend it with cocoa butter.
Okay, and what is the product that you're targeting? So as I understand correctly, it's milk fat replacement by a blend of these plant-based fats.
Yes, well, it's a long way work because I just beginning my thesis. The first objective is to understand well the cocoa butter and copra oil blending, but at the end we would like to put this fat into emulsion, and so that's why I talk about milk fat, is because maybe by emulsifying these two vegetable fats, we will be able to have this kind of textural properties that we have with milk fat
So you're targeting a dairy cream, in fact, or yeah, something like.
Yes, well, it's very fundamental for the beginning, but we will see at the end if we have this kind of texture.
You mentioned in your poster that you do a multi-scale approach, so you also study the nanostructure, but I do not find any results in the poster. Can you say something about that? What you really do on that structural level?
Yes, we did this multi-scale approach on the poster and only represent the micro scale and the macro scale. But we are right now going to analyze the nanostructure using X-ray diffraction at the University of Bordeaux. So it's just new. We just began last month. So we would like to see, in fact, yes, if, well, first of all, we have kind of cocoa butter polyformism, depending on the crystallization temperature first, and also if there is what kind of molecular packing we have regarding cocoa butter when it's mixed with coconut oil.
I think this is quite important to understand, because
yes, this
complex
will be the big next step.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, thank you.
You go, Amanda, your turn.
Okay,
I'll take the.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you, Julie. Nice job. One of the things I liked that you did was to start off by asking the audience a question to pull us in, and by asking about our food, you made it very personal for all of us right from the start, because as we know, everybody eats, so we all have thoughts about our diet. So I thought that was a good strategy to start off a presentation. I wanted to follow up a little bit on this idea of the eutectic, and so are there things that you could do processing wise to minimize the influence of the eutectic on the product quality? Things that you're looking into? I think you said that you're trying out different melting temperatures, or different crystallization temperatures.
Did we lose her? She disappeared from the screen. Did she?
Yeah, unfortunately, it seems we lost connection there.
Yeah.
So we'll have Julie rejoin, and we can always revisit the Q&A. So sorry, everyone. We'll check on Julie. I'm sure everything is just fine. Right now, we're going to go ahead and go to the next speaker.
Julie, we're back.
Yes, finally.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned that you're planning to test out different crystallization temperatures and to explore the effects on melting temperature. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I was wondering if there's anything else that any other processing parameters you might be considering testing to see if that might influence the product properties and behavior.
Yes, good question. Well, we regarding the crystallization temperature, we will also well, we have already tried to see if there is an impact when we do tempering, because well, cocoa butter is kind of a polymorphic fat. So we did also a tempering, a pre-crystallization step before crystallization to see, yes, if we have this the different results. And also during the next years, we will see if there is an impact of shearing. First of all, see if there is an impact of shearing at a lab scale, and maybe when we will put this this kind of vegetable fat into emulsion, we would like also to see if during shearing in a surface scraped heat exchanger will also impact, and we will change the textural properties of the final fat mixture.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi, Julie. I think it's very interesting, but I agree with Philip that you had a lot of nice data and pictures in your poster. It would have been so nice if you also put in the slides for in future. I think it's a great prop for your storytelling. Now, the work you have done, I mean, isn't it very similar to studying cocoa butter substitute and cocoa butter melting behavior and crystallization behavior, CBS and cocoa butters?
Yes, well, CBS, well, so you're right, but sometimes CBS is, so cocoa butter substitute, like lauric fat, like coconut oil or palm kernel oil. This work has already been done, but sometimes they just only mix a few % of this lauric fat with cocoa butter. So they don't have this. They don't really use and use and put the spotlight on the eutectic behavior when we mix these two kind of fat. And here we also want to go deeper in this multi-scale approach by really comparing when we will have XRD result, when really comparing the molecular packing with the microstructure we have and the textural properties of the fat blend at the end.
Yeah, because I think, if you want to go into the non-palm origin fat route, then you have to often probably compare with the standard CBS, the fully hydro palm kernel stearins. And one other question that you had these SFCs in your solid fat content data, right? So which method did you use? Did you use the long method or also for the blend different quick tempering method? Which tempering method did you follow?
We only did for the SFC that I present in the poster, crystallization during 19 minutes at 4 degrees Celsius, but we didn't do, for example, the AOCS tempering method. But we will do it because in order to obtain this the more stable polyformic form of cocoa butter, for sure, to see if there is an impact at the end.
And I'm sure we'll hear more from you. And I think one final comment that, when you have the fat phase ready, if you're going to make actual chocolates, keep an eye on the demolding behavior of the chocolates, because the companies who love to have a shiny surface with their logo on the chocolate. So for them, the demolding properties of the chocolate tablet is also very important. So keep an eye on that. And
yeah, that's good.
Next time when we meet physically, bring some samples. I'll volunteer to taste it. Thank you.
I will be pleased. Thank you.
Excellent. Hey, Julie, we had one question from the audience, and it states, can we have this liquid behavior by mixing other fats?
Yeah, sure. Well, as I told Kostov, we have this eutectic behavior when mixing cocoa butter with other lauric fats, such as palm kernel oil. But if I may remember, well, we have also milk fat with when we have milk fat in high quantity, when it's blended with cocoa butter, we may have this kind of eutectic and incompatibility.
Great. Thank you very much. Enjoyed the presentation very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the closing of the first three speakers. So if you're in the audience now, we need you to go and vote for your top picks of the first three speakers. And you can do that while we're moving on with the next speaker. So our next speaker is Luisa Jones. She's from Dr. Martini's lab, good friend of mine at Utah State University. Annalisa is a first-year master's student at Utah State. She completed her bachelor's degree in food science at Brigham Young University in 2020. She joined the Utah State team, and she's been involved in the club presidency, product development, College Bowl, and research in Martini's lab, Dr. Martini's lab. And her research is focused on understanding and improving butter functionality in laminated doughs. So the title of her talk is Relationship Between Butter Physical Properties and Water Loss in Laminated Pastry Model Systems. So welcome, Annalisa, and thank you for presenting with us today.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, picture this. A thunderstorm hits and rain comes pouring down. As soon as you hear the rain on the roof, you've been trained on what to do. It's time to collect buckets, cups, bowls, pots and pans, whatever you can find to catch the water leaking through the roof. You have to save the sofa, the dresser, the carpet, or the hardwood floor from the constant drip. If you have lived in an old house or even seen a movie of someone who's lived in an old house, you know the scene I'm describing. Although the leak may be ever so small, you still make the effort to protect your home from the rain outside. Eventually, this tactic of catching rain will get old and it's time to fix the roof. In my research, I'm not fixing leaky roofs, but I am working towards reducing a different kind of leak. My name is Annalisa Jones, and I'm studying the relationship between the physical properties of butter and water loss in a laminated pastry system. Now, laminated dough is made up of two major components, the dough and the butter or the fat layer. The pastry is prepared by folding and rolling these layers over and over again to prepare one giant piece of many layers. The pastry is folded and rolled and folded and rolled over and over again, and that creates the layers that help with rise. Both the butter and the dough layer are important in the proper rise of the pastry and the texture. The butter acts as a barrier between each layer, helping the layers cook separately, but also acts as a barrier from any water in the system. When the pastry is cooked, the water in the dough evaporates and turns to water vapor. This water vapor is trapped underneath that fat layer, and it's what causes the rise, creating air pockets in the dough. This allows for the flakiness and rise of croissants or puff pastries that you enjoy. However, the pressure of the rolling process takes a toll on the butter. And just like your leaky roof, the water and oil emulsion of the butter breaks and water can leak out of the system. This is one of the major struggles that we've seen and that we want to combat. In order to combat this leak, we can't simply catch drops of water like we would with pots and pans. The butter needs to be strengthened. I've studied the properties of commercial butter in order to identify what characteristics are correlated to water loss. We initially identified the amount of water loss in each of the commercial butter samples. This was done by following a procedure similar to the one I just described, folding and rolling, but in this system, we simply used filter paper instead of dough. We rolled out the butter samples in between the filter paper, took samples of that butter after rolling, and measured the water content. We then compared it to a butter that had not been rolled out, just the simple control. And these are shown in this chart. The control in the blue bars and the rolled samples, or like the after rolling samples, in the tan bars. Using a two-way ANOVA, we identified which of those had a significant difference in between the samples. It was identified that 5 of the 10 samples had a significant amount of loss, and these samples are all commercial butter samples. After identifying the amount of loss of the rolled and the control butters, we tested the physical properties on all 10 samples, including melting profiles, solid fat content, water droplet size, rheological properties, and hardness. We then performed a correlation analysis to pinpoint trends related to water loss. All characteristics were tested for correlation, but I will only cover the significant results. In the end, we identified a negative correlation between the solid fat content at 30 and 35 degrees Celsius, as you can see here. This indicates that a lower amount of solid fat content in the samples at temperatures above room temperature followed a trend of higher water loss. Melting profile, including medium melting fraction, enthalpy, and onset and peak temperatures of the high melting fraction, were also negatively correlated with water loss. Hardness was similarly determined to have a negative correlation. We're in the process of analyzing further testing to understand all the correlations. Understanding this correlation allows for the identification of the most important characteristics in pastry butter. We can incorporate those characteristics into butter production to strengthen the emulsion of the butter products. If we can fix the butter, we no longer have to worry about the leak. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Annalisa. That was a great presentation. I really liked your comparison. So we're going to open up your paper to the judges, and I'll let them decide who wants to go first.
I can go first.
Good, thank you.
First, Philippe.
Okay, Annalisa, thank you for the nice story. Nice presentation, a good pace, very clearly told and also illustrated. It's a very interesting topic because this is really something which is happening in industry, and all the industries using butter in laminated dough have this problem. So it's really something also seen in Europe. I was very interested by your folding method that is also in your poster. You didn't show it in your pitch, but am I correct that this is like a pasta sheeter that you used to compress the butter, and did you then do that continuously sometimes, or it's only one compression?
Yeah, so our full process, we would take the filter paper, put the butter on it, and then put another piece on top and roll it through the pasta maker in order to make sure it's consistent with all of our samples. And so we started at like the largest gap that we could do, and then went down to the 6th setting. And we did that because we tested where we're seeing the greatest amount of water loss and where we can see that emulsion breaking, and we noticed that was right at that setting. So we went through every setting, starting at 0, going down to 6, kind of to mimic that same procedure as in laminating when you are layering it slowly one
nice time. Approach. Yeah, indeed. In your poster, you mentioned also water droplet size distribution was determined with NMR, but I don't see results.
Yes. So
on the poster. So I'm just curious, is there a lot of influence or relation with the water loss and the water droplet size?
We didn't see a strong correlation, and that was actually really surprising to us. We thought that was going to be a bigger factor. That is something we want to look further into.
And what was around the mean value of droplet size in your butters?
It was right around, let me pull pull up the stats. Water droplet was right around like between 5 and 7, which from my research of other papers, that's pretty typical for commercial butter.
Okay, final question from my side. How does a producer of butter can influence the water loss? What do they need to do to prevent water loss?
Yeah, if we're looking at those correlation factors, we are wanting like a harder butter, and then we're also going to want something with a higher melting fraction, because if we have a higher loss, a lower solid fat content at like 30 or 35 degrees, then that's pretty highly correlated to water loss. But if we have
do you think a producer can influence that?
I think that you could, one of the things we want to actually study in the future is fractioning the butter fat. So being able to fraction out those portions, and then you could influence the amount of.
Yeah, then you can do reconstitution to the desired amounts. Okay, thank you. Exactly. Nice.
Yeah, if I go. Yeah, go ahead, Amanda. Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
No. I mean, Annalisa and Philippe covered most of the topics I was planning to ask, but
sorry,
I should
Amanda.
now, Christophe. No, that's great. Annalisa, really great job. I was really surprised to hear that you're just in your first year of an MSc. Congratulations on so much progress to this point. And we'll look forward to seeing you at AOCS in the future, I'm sure. So congratulations, and you told a really nice story with the leaky roof. Thank you. I was curious. You talked about formulating butters with a higher solid fat content at 30 degrees or 35. And I was thinking, how specifically would you recommend to somebody to do this right now? Is there a strategy you see that's viable?
Yeah, kind of what I was saying before. I think really that fractioning out of the butter, in our future studies, we're planning on taking anhydrous milk fat and fractioning that and then adding it back to our cream to be able to see if that's going to change the effect. And so that's something we're planning on studying in the future. But I think that fractionation of the butter fats is something that could help in that.
Did you do any fatty acid determination of the different butters?
We didn't in this study.
Do you have a sense of whether they would vary significantly?
Honestly, in this one, I can't say that I do. We got all of the, just from the different manufacturers, it would be really hard to tell based on where they're getting their milk from or things like that.
It would be really interesting to see that. In Canada right now, we're facing something called Buttergate, because anecdotally people were reporting during COVID-19 that butter seems to be a lot harder. And this has led some people to postulate that it's related to increased feeding of palm stearin and palm fat in the animal feed. And so it's blown up into the news media a lot significantly. So I'd just be interesting to also keep in mind this possible relationship between slight differences in fatty acid composition and the hardness and other factors. So really nice job. Thank you.
That would be very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, Amanda touched a very good point. The change in composition, winter versus summer, or the feed, I think that can have an impact. I think you started very well with that, the raindrops or the drops coming in. And I originally am from India, so I know that if it rains, if you're even within trees, the leakage and all that. So that was a good start. And so we had a French baker in our application lab. He would always say that, oh, don't bring margarine to my croissant. Let me work with butter. That's probably what people like. So I think it immediately reminded me that, yeah, butter is definitely the preferred fat phase in, croissants and other pastries. But it's quite expensive, right? So in many countries, people do a recombined butter, what Philip was touching base on. They would take 60% or 70% AMF and put water inside, and with emulsifiers and high shear, they would still get a beautiful droplet size distribution, 3 to 4 microns on a 50% distribution, which is quite good. I think much smaller than standard ones. But I think if you can look into, I don't think I have any specific question, but I think your final conclusion, the looking into different fractions of butter, the high melting. And I tend to believe that if you remove the mid melting fraction, the high melting with some liquid oil, a little bit of that, health issues or whatever, that could be interesting. But one thing, what was the ambient temperature of your room when you handle these butters? What temperature was it? In your lab, what was the room temperatures approximately? I need to convert to centigrade. So you probably will tell me in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I do not actually know the specific temperature of our room when we were
because
doing
that could, I think that would play an important part, whether it is 18, 19 degrees or in the 23s or something, that would affect, right?
I think that's very true.
And also that for every time you take out a sample, I mean, is it tempered to the right temperature? If you have a series of samples, are they all lying in the room, or you're taking out from a particular temperature cabinet and then trying to laminate? And another point was that I've seen, what was the shape of your butter blocks? Were they like big cubes, blocks like brick, or plates, more like plates?
It was bricks, but not big bricks. It's like a pound of butter, but split into 4 bricks, basically.
Because, many times, I'm just showing at offices, sometimes if it is like this block and you have to squeeze it down to a thin layer, then you put much more pressure on it, right? Breaking the structure. But many a times in the industry, they will sell it as plates, pack it as 2 kilo plates. So they don't need too much of compressive force. So maybe next time, if you can, talking to any company that, if you slice it and see the effect from starting from a chunk of butter to a slice of butter, a thin sheet. So that could be interesting to see that effect.
Yeah, sorry, I misunderstood your question. When we rolled it out, we did slice it. So it wasn't.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't too clear. I think maybe it's 10 o'clock.
That's okay.
But no, I think it's very interesting. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And one comment question from the audience. Dear Annalisa, maybe you lose oil too, but not water, ? So they're wondering if you're losing some of the oil as well.
That's a good point. I think that would be represented in the water content as well. We tried the same process with margarine, and we actually saw that we did see oil loss with that one more than we did with butter, but that would be really interesting to study.
Thank you so much. Wonderful topic. Great paper.
Thank you.
Hi, well, our next speaker is Kristen Patnode. She's a graduate student at North Dakota State University in Fargo, just up the road from me. She graduated 2020 from North Dakota State with a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry degree. Her current research is focused on combining experimental and computational techniques in the advancement of protein-based bioplastic films targeted towards food packaging applications. So in the title of her talk today, is protein ligand docking is a tool to predict properties and performance of plant protein-based bioplastic films. Thanks for joining us, Kristen. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for that introduction. Like you said, my name is Kristen Patnode, and I'm excited to share with you all about my work regarding protein ligand docking as a tool to predict performance of protein-based bioplastic films. Time is running out. Have you heard that recently? This is a concept that's really been pushed to the front of many people's minds, especially recently when a clock in New York City switched to show the quote-unquote time remaining instead of the time of day, which was suggesting the urgency with which we need to address the health of our planet. Indeed, images like those on the bottom of the screen are becoming all too familiar to us. Merchandise with quotes such as, there is no planet B, sell like hotcakes. And yet, we continue to see dramatic and devastating changes to the health of our planet, largely caused by irresponsible plastic production, poor waste handling of plastic materials, and the depletion of finite virgin resources. So how can we slow down the clock then? Well, much research is focused on developing bio-based, specifically protein-based, and edible bioplastic alternatives to petrochemical products. And this is really exciting work. But what if I told you that scientists have been developing these plant-based alternatives for nearly 100 years? yes, advancements have been made, but not so far as to replace the more competitive petrochemical products. Clearly, we need bio-based alternatives, but we really don't have time. So I'd like to ask again, how do we slow down the clock? And I propose computational techniques. As demonstrated here, computational methods are faster than experimental work. Indeed, running calculations and simulating material interactions can be done in minutes as opposed to days. And while I mentioned that edible bioplastic studies have been underway for nearly a century, within those 100 years, no work has been done which utilizes computational techniques as an aid in bioplastic advancement, which is to say that computational methods have yet to be applied to edible application technology. So in my work, I use a combined approach where I use computational methods to predict experimental outcomes. I then validate those estimated findings by performing the wet lab experiments. This proof of concept demonstrates that we can accurately predict the properties and performance of protein-based bioplastic films for various systems, thus expediting the advancement of bioplastic alternatives to petrochemical products. So how does this really work? We use protein ligand docking, which I have here shown in the middle. Protein ligand docking simulates the interactions that take place between a protein and an additive. Since protein-based bioplastic film formation depends on the physical interactions that occur between protein and plasticizer, we can fairly compare these computational results to real-life bioplastics. Then, by comparing those results across multiple additives and observing how and where each additive interacts with the protein, we can estimate the effect that each additive will have on the mechanical properties and water resistance of these materials. So when we go into the lab, then we're able to limit our film development to those additives and compositions which we've predicted will have the most optimal effects. Now you may be wondering, is this effective and actually time efficient? And so I'd like to offer a tangible time comparison. My undergraduate student had spent 10 weeks optimizing a soy protein film modified with natural additives. And this was 10 weeks of wet lab work and experimental techniques. Using our combined approach, I was able to predict the same outcomes in just 2 weeks. That's 5 times faster than the wet lab approach. I mean, by that metric, all the advancements made in the last 100 years could have been done in just 20. So now what? Well, now that we understand computational methods can be used and accurately predict the properties and performance of protein-based bioplastic films, we aim to apply this technology to more diverse and more complex materials, thus further advancing edible bioplastic alternatives in a more cost-effective, sustainable, and time-efficient manner. And with that, I would like to thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Kristen, for a great paper. Very interesting. Lots of potential advantages to using computational analysis at significant time savings. So I appreciate that. Judges, can we open up Kristen's paper to questions now?
Well, if I go first, yeah, Kirsten, right? Yeah, Kristen. So yeah, I think it's definitely very interesting, and that's the way I think civilization would go. My question is that, you know, with all the demand for plant protein as a part of our diet, I mean, there could be some leftover proteins from different sources, you know, from, I don't know, chicken feathers and other stuff that has not been tapped into. Do you have an effect of the type of protein that is it nature of the protein independent, or it has to be definitely plant protein based?
That's a great question. Definitely there is some competition, like you're saying, with where proteins are being distributed. So far, what we can tell from our approach is we've only looked at it for plant proteins, but we chose, in my poster, I talk about soy protein and zein protein, which are pretty dramatically different structures. And this was intentional because then we're sort of bookending the approach. And with those, we were able to see, again, consistent, reproducible, and accurate results. So we would have to try it with a different type of protein, but my kind of intuitive feeling is that it shouldn't make a big difference on the type or the source of that protein should not affect the predictability of this approach.
Okay. So what's next in your research? What's your next target? What do you plan to do with this?
We're continuing to use computational approaches and furthering the advancement of our films to really start incorporating another natural additive, which is a plant oil-based latex, and see if we can still use the computational approach to predict effects of a polymer plasticizer.
So one last question before I let others chime in. When you have this kind of, let's say, a film packaging material, do you expect any kind of the microbial degradation or risk factor, any kind of microbial attacks or something?
This is a really good question. And there is some work that's been done previously about the effects of microbial kind of interaction and degradation of these films, which depending on your kind of target shelf life could be an advantage or a disadvantage. In the case of being a replacement for petrochemical products, it's actually an advantage that these would be biodegradable materials and readily biodegradable. So there is a concern that the microbial damage could happen too soon. But so far in our work, we haven't seen that to be an issue.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope you will come with more and more results every year so we can follow the whole progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kristen, I'll jump in just to say I really enjoyed your presentation. I enjoyed the tone that you took and the way you walked us through the importance of the work, and even give a quick description of what computational techniques are for those of us who don't work in that area. So I thought you did a really nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and I had some questions about, how you're deciding which additives to include. I think in your poster you refer to them as natural. Are these drawn from things that industry is already using, has already deemed to have influence to lead to certain properties that would be desirable?
Yeah, so the we focused on some of the most commonly used additives in literature and industry. So specifically like glycerol, sorbitol, and cellulose, all of which are derived from natural sources, which helps maintain the bio-based advantage. But then also those three are shown to have different effects on bioplastic materials. And so again, trying to kind of bookend the different effects that we would anticipate to see and see how the computational approach handles those differences was the goal in choosing those three. So we were choosing ones that are not only prominent in research, but we anticipated different effects. So we could really sort of validate the predictability of that computational approach.
Right. So then you define success based on whatever properties you're trying to achieve in the bioplastic that you're targeting.
Yes, we define success of our approach to be that the kind of predicted effects or the predicted results from the computation would then align with the actual measured results from experimental work.
Right. And it's very cool, very interesting that you have that actual example from your own group showing that you had a 5 times faster process. I liked how you brought that back to sort of showcase the technique. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Kirsten, very nice research, very good talk, explaining at a good level that everybody can understand. I'm also wondering if this approach, your computational method, can it also be applied to other types of structures? Now you're studying bio-based plastic, but for example, those plant proteins, they're also used and studied nowadays a lot to form, for example, meat alternatives. Can this type of approach also be used to pre-screen or to have a better idea on how to get innovative protein structures for this application?
That's a really interesting question. the way that our approach works with the film formation is that we're focused on the interactions between sort of our plasticizers and the protein. So in our case, we're mostly screening the plasticizers. But if you were to translate that to, like you're saying, a meat alternative application, and you have a set sort of additive or a set system, you could essentially screen the protein. The only limitation would be the size of those materials. Computation does sort of have a limiting factor of size, in that as soon as you get to too large of a system, it no longer is able to function. So that I would say is the limiting factor in the meat alternative application, because I know there does tend to be some larger systems in those materials.
Yeah, okay. Now in real life and practice, protein properties which you use in your product development, they will also depend on how they were processed. And so how they were extracted, is there a heating step already performed on the protein or not? Does your approach also takes into account these aspects when studying the functionality done in the bio-based plastic?
No, so which is a really great question, because you're right, the extraction process and how you treat the protein can have a significant effect on the results. With computation, we're a little bit limited in that we can only look at the structure of the actual protein, which we have to assume is going to be consistent. But what's actually interesting is that in preparing our films in the lab, we did have a number of different sources. So for example, we used soy protein, but we had it from 3 different sources. And all of those still showed consistent results with the computational approach, which we would consider an advantage, in that we can eliminate some computational time trying to treat the proteins computationally. And instead we are able to actually use that native structure, and it is shown to be accurate for proteins of number of different sources. If that answers your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
And Kristen, we have a question from the audience. I think you might have touched on this a bit. How well do you need to know the protein's tertiary structure to apply your methodology?
Yeah, so the structure of the protein, like I said, we like to use the native structure, which in the case of our materials, for a lot of proteins, there's more than one significant globulin. And so I'll touch on soy protein, because there are about 4 different prominent globulins in soy protein. And you do need those individual native structures, but we don't have to worry too much about anything beyond that. So a lot of those resources are available in the protein database and in literature that's done experimental work. And what we ended up doing is using more than one of those protein globulin structures, and then kind of mathematically combining those results to be cumulative of an entire soy protein sort of feedstock. To answer, I guess, the question about tertiary structure, you'll need it to have a native structure of the protein. And then understanding it does help in analyzing those results, and kind of understanding which amino acid residues are where and how that folding might be affected in bioplastic formation does help in the analysis portion. But for the actual approach to run, we just need a native structure.
Fantastic. So thank you, Kristen. Excellent paper and good discussion. So that concludes the second half of the presentations. And now, audience, you can vote for your favorite 2 from Kristen's presentation or Annalisa's presentation, and that'll be tallied. And then we'll also tally all the results and get back to you with the winner of the competition and the runner-up. All right, welcome back. Hey, it's the result time. We're going to announce the winners. The winner of the EAT pitch will receive $200, and the runner-up will receive $100. So, and we actually have a tie for the runner-up. We have Kristen and Maria tying for second place. So congratulations. And then our first place winner is Kunal. So congratulations.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Yeah, so great presentations and really solid science. Yay, bravo.
Thank you so much. A nice question from the judges, actually. It adds the value to the research, actually.
Yeah, so very excited for all of you. And, thank you so much for participating. And judges, thank you for well thought out questions and interactions with our fine scientists here today.
And Doc, thank you very much for moderating this. And Amy, you're always awesome. Denise and everybody, thank you for making it easy for us. We did the easy part. You guys did a much difficult part. So thank you all for very much for participating, for being members of the EAT, increase the value of our division. And it's been an absolute pleasure this evening. So all the best.